So, you've probably heard the term serverless thrown around, right? What does it actually mean? It's not magic, but it is a huge shift in how we build stuff. In this explainer, we're going to break it all down. What it is, how it works, and maybe, just maybe, why it's the answer you've been looking for.
Let me ask you something. Have you ever been up late patching a server? Or maybe stressing out because a sudden traffic spike might bring everything crashing down? Or, my personal favorite, looking at a bill for servers that are just sitting there, doing nothing. If any of that sounds familiar, you've already felt the exact pain that serverless was built to fix.
For a long time, if you wanted to build an application, you had no choice. You had to deal with the constant nagging headache of managing the servers yourself.
And these challenges, they're probably hitting close to home for a lot of you. I mean, you had to guess how many servers you needed, which almost always meant paying for capacity you weren't even using. And scaling up for a big traffic surge, oh, that was a whole complex manual nightmare. The whole thing was just slow, it was expensive, and frankly, it took you away from what you're actually supposed to be doing, writing great code.
So to get away from all that pain, the industry started thinking there has to be a better way. A new model that lets us focus just on our code, on the application's logic, and not get stuck in the mud of the infrastructure underneath it all. And that's where serverless comes in.
Okay, let's get one thing straight right off the bat. The name serverless is, well, it's a little misleading. It doesn't mean there are no servers. Of course there are servers. It just means you don't have to manage them. The cloud provider, your AWS, Google, Microsoft, they handle everything. Provisioning, patching, scaling, all of it. It's their problem now, not yours.
Right. This quote just nails it. It's the biggest misconception out there. It's not about getting rid of servers. It's about hiding them, abstracting them away from you. You still get all the incredible power of the cloud's massive infrastructure, but you don't have to deal with any of the day-to-day management headaches. Your focus can finally be 100% on your code.
So how do we actually do this serverless thing? Well, the main model is called Functions as a Service, or FaaS for short. And the idea is pretty simple. Instead of deploying a big monolithic application, you break it down and deploy tiny individual functions. Each function has one job, and it only runs when something triggers it. We call that an event.
And here's the part that makes your finance department really happy, the real game changer. With FaaS, you literally only pay for the exact milliseconds your code is running. That's it. So if your app isn't getting any traffic, your bill is zero, zilch. Say goodbye to paying for servers just sitting around doing nothing. It is the ultimate pay for what you use model.
All right, so that all sounds pretty great in theory. But you might be wondering, how does this actually work? How can an event just trigger some code if there isn't a server constantly running and waiting for it? Well, it's actually a really simple and kind of elegant process.
Think of it like a four-step dance. First, some kind of event happens. That event is the trigger. Step 2, it instantly calls your function into action. Then, the cloud provider works its magic, it finds some compute power, runs your code, and gets the result. And finally, once it's all done, everything just spins back down to nothing. Simple as that.
So what kind of events are we talking about here? Pretty much anything you can imagine. It could be an HTTP request from a web browser, an API call. It could be someone uploading a new photo to your storage, or a new message popping into a queue. It could even be a simple timer that just says, hey, run this piece of code every single hour. This whole event-driven thing is what makes serverless so incredibly flexible.
Okay, now, let's be real. Like any tech, serverless isn't a magic wand that solves every problem. It's got some amazing strengths, for sure, but it also comes with some trade-offs, some gotchas that you absolutely need to know about. So let's take a look at the good and the not so good.
On the good side, the benefits are huge. We already talked about not having to manage servers and the amazing cost model. But the automatic scaling? That is a game changer. Your little function can go from 0 executions to thousands of them running at the same time, in seconds, and you don't have to lift a finger. This lets you move incredibly fast and get your ideas out into the world so much quicker.
But then there are the gotchas. You'll hear people talk about cold starts. That's just a little bit of delay the very first time a function runs after being idle for a while. Also, these functions have time limits. They're meant for short tasks, not for things that need to run for hours. And a big one, they're stateless. That means they have no memory. Every time a function runs, it's like it's the first time. If you need to remember something, you have to save it somewhere else, like in a database.
Okay, so we've covered the tech, but what does this all actually mean for you, for developers and teams on the ground? How does it really change the way you build and ship software?
This table lays it out perfectly. It shows the evolution. Way back with virtual machines, or VMs, you managed pretty much everything. Then came containers, which was a huge step up. They handled the operating system for you. But with serverless, the deal is as simple as it gets. You write the code. That's it. The cloud provider handles literally everything else. It lets you focus on what you do best.
Now this is super important. A lot of people hear serverless and think it means no ops, no operations. That is absolutely not true. It's a shift in what your operations work looks like. You're not patching servers anymore, that's true, but now you're focused on monitoring performance, locking down security, and building those smooth, automated deployment pipelines for all your little functions. The work doesn't disappear, it just moves to a higher level.
So if you're thinking, okay, this sounds cool, where do I start? These are the names you need to know. AWS Lambda is kind of the 800-pound gorilla in the room. They were first and are the biggest. But Azure Functions and Google Cloud Functions are right there with them, super powerful, and they all work on the exact same core ideas we've been talking about.
All right, let's wrap this up. We've gone through the why, the what, and the how of serverless. So the big question remains, when should you actually use it? When is it the right tool for the job? This is a great cheat sheet. The sweet spot for serverless is anything that's event-driven. Think about things like processing an image after it's uploaded, running little automation jobs, or powering an API that gets really spiky, unpredictable traffic. It's perfect for that. But if you have something that needs to be running constantly, 24/7 with predictable traffic, like a big database, an old-school server might actually be cheaper in the long run.
So here's the bottom line. Serverless isn't here to replace everything. It's not the end of servers. But it is an incredibly powerful new tool in your toolbox. By hiding the servers from you, it lets you build faster, scale bigger than you ever thought possible, and only pay for exactly what you use. So the real question now is, after all this, what will your next serverless project be?